Baby, baby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and I guess those who don't identify as either. This is your boy NotoriousSA, aka Steve Anderson, aka No Mercy for Insurrection, back with another episode. So yesterday, I'm recording this on July 28th, so whenever it posts, but yesterday, the day before, this was July 27th. This was the opening day of the January 6th Select Committee in the House of Representatives, their opening day of testimony featuring 4 police officers who were involved in the brutal hand-to-hand combat of the insurrection. DC Metropolitan Police Officers Daniel Hodges and Michael Fanone, and Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn and Sergeant Aguino Ganell, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Aguino Ganell, testified, which included body camera footage and other accounts of what they went through on January 6th. And it was nothing less than physical combat attacks by rabid Trump supporters who believed that the election was stolen and that these police officers were engaging in treason. These people were attacked. They had their eyes attempted to be gouged out, mask ripped off, heart attacks, shocks, bear spray, pepper spray, physical assaults with fists and pens and flags, all while being told that the people attacking them were the true pro-law enforcement crowd. It was hard to watch. There were tears. There were tears from some of the officers, tears from Adam Kinzinger, tears from people who, have a general collective soul and heart and know what happened to these brave men didn't need to happen. And it's very clear why what happened, and the whole point of this opening day was to get the first sense of the true brutal violence that occurred at the January 6th insurrection. If you've gotten this far in, you're probably still wondering about my title, which I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. How's that for clickbait, Daily Wire? How's that for things people want to read and listen to? Fun side note, my tweet about Ben Shapiro was featured in the Bulwark newsletter last week about Ben Shapiro after the NPR story came out. You know, how Ben used to tell the truth about Donald Trump and then realized his audience wanted to go a different direction, so of course he pivoted. And hey, it's a smart strategy. The man wants to make money. But we're not here to talk about that. What I'm here to talk about is why I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. And I know, you probably see that headline, you probably see this and think, this is rather ghoulish. I mean, sure, she was an insurrectionist who was part of an insurrection and was killed justifiably by a police officer whom bad actors are trying to name so they could harass them with death threats, even though this officer did nothing wrong. And Ashli Babbitt got exactly what she deserved. So let's do a quick review of the facts. On January 6th, after months of lies and bad legal challenges from then-President Donald Trump and his campaign to overturn the results of what was the most secure election in American history, he had rallies promoting the quote-unquote Stop the Steal, implying that the election had been stolen from him using, whatever nonsense you want to bring up from the past. And that all culminated at the January 6th insurrection. Now, January 6th is important because that's the day that they certified the Electoral College votes, and President Trump wrongly believed that he could stop it through Mike Pence or through some other situation. And a reminder that at the speech he gave outside of the White House on January 6th, which of course it was cloudy and dark that day, so when you see him, he looks like a villain, because in this story, he is one of the villains. He said that there was fraud, and because there was fraud, the rules no longer apply. He believed that the other side committed fraud, which they didn't, and therefore his side could do whatever they wanted because the other side had broken the rules, which is Trump's classic both sides, blame everybody, create chaos strategy. And what happened? You can see it in the New York Times video. You can see it from other public videos. And you're right, this was before Trump had finished speaking, which just goes to show that with recent court documents, you can tell that other people planned to take the Capitol well in advance of Trump and were planning on Trump invoking the Insurrection Act. Because again, they believed the lies that Donald Trump had promoted about the election. Ashli Babbitt is among these people. Ashli Babbitt, who is a 14-year Air Force veteran with a not distinguished career, and apparently from my reading had some issue with authority, but also was a, I guess, spunky person who kind of just did whatever she wanted, bought into QAnon and bought into the election lies and marched on the Capitol that day with the other insurrectionists. Now, let's take a pause here, because you might still be mad about what I said, that I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. And I don't want to sound ghoulish. I don't want to sound like I enjoy anybody dying. But I'm not glad that because I knew Ashli Babbitt personally and I didn't like her, she died. I'm glad because she was engaged in an act of terrorism. She was engaged in breaking and entering. She was engaged in threatening the lives of lawmakers and staff. So when the very well-published video of her trying to cross through a broken window resulted in her being warned and then shot, was I surprised? No. Because again, in any other circumstance, if it was someone breaking into your house, or breaking into a building, or breaking into any other place like that, where people were there, and guns are pointed at you, and they're saying, don't come through the barricade. If you try to break through the barricade, you're gonna have a bad time. And in her case, that involved getting shot in the neck. Honestly, if it wasn't for the great restraint of all of these police officers that day, there probably would have been way more dead. Way more. The fact that Ashli Babbitt was the only one that had to be killed justifiably shows what amazing character and strength the police had when they frankly were outnumbered and outmatched in dealing with whatever issues were happening at the top of their command chain, along with the, and let's be clear, let's stress this out, for all the talk about Nancy Pelosi and the Capitol Police and all this stuff about why weren't the security measures in place, why was there a rally on January 6th in the first place? Because Donald Trump was lying about the election and lying about how he could somehow overturn it. And he very much, from what we know, was thrilled when his supporters stormed the Capitol. And based on the conversations he's had with other members who probably will be called before same said select committee, we'll hopefully have to answer questions about his mindset. Because while Mike Pence was fighting for his life in the basement and trying to maintain order, Donald Trump was sitting in his chair, most likely, not helping, not caring, just watching the violence like everybody else. And all these people, Dan Proft, Charlie Kirk, AM 560, Newsmax, OAN, Julie Kelly, all of these people who want to talk about Ashli Babbitt like she's some sort of martyr and hero and innocent victim, get fucked. My response to you is get fucked, and I'm glad she's dead. Does that sound harsh? From the same people who basically say that January 6th is either an inside job or Antifa or not an insurrection at all, which they can't really make up their minds because it has to be a combination of all three. They try everything in their power to make the most simple explanation, which shows that they're wrong, not the case. Whether it's Julie Kelly out there claiming that the FBI is planting the entire thing, or that other people say that Ashli Babbitt didn't have to die, bullshit. Ashli Babbitt was a grown-ass woman who served in the military and should have known better, and when she crossed through the barricade, she had it coming. You may have heard a small meow in the background. My cat thinks I'm mad at her, but I'm not. I'm not really mad at anybody, I guess. I guess somewhere between disappointed and not shocked at the ghoulishness of other people. But Steve, aren't you being a ghoul right now? No, I'm not. I'm not, because the facts are on my side. The facts are Ashli Babbitt shouldn't have been where she was, and her shooting was justified. The facts are that Donald Trump launched an insurrection against his government, and a majority of the Senate and a majority of the American public all agree to that fact. The fact that he is still somehow the kingmaker in the Republican Party despite launching a terrorist attack with his name branded all over it, it just goes to show that for many people, all they care about really is either negative partisanship or owning the libs or trying to be contrarian, because if they were actually pro-police and pro-law enforcement, this would have been the time to say, hey, you were wrong when you said that all of the riots in 2020 were not riots, and we were right to say that the police here acted responsibly. You could take the high ground. Moosh. Sorry for the awkward cutaway. My cats needed food, and I realized that I was ignoring that. So they're fed now, and we can get back with the program. To be clear, we all saw what happened with Ashli Babbitt. And if you want the whole timeline of her life leading up to that moment, you can. And you know what? You can make the argument that people aren't their worst moment. People can go beyond their worst moment. They can always redeem themselves. But Ashli Babbitt can't redeem herself because she's dead. She's dead because she tried to break into a place she wasn't allowed to go into. And you know, here's the thing. What really grinds my gears, I guess you could say, is the same people, the same largely ignorant, and I'm sure quite a few of them white supremacist people, who say that George Floyd had it coming, people should get shot when they're crossing the border, they should have their kids separated from them when they cross the border, that anybody related to Antifa or the riots last year in 2020 should have had it coming. All of them give up all credibility and even logic when they say that this person, who clearly was also committing an illegal act, is the victim. You know, it's not hard to just be like, hey, no matter what the political affiliation of the person is, if they're in the process of committing a crime and it's documented, and it's not like it's a question of what happened. It's not a question of, was Ashli Babbitt allowed to be where she was? It's not a question of, is breaking through a window in the middle of a violent mob a sign that you may be a danger to the other police officers around? I just don't see why that's so hard. They say she was unarmed. How would anybody know that? How would you know that? Especially when they're punching windows and smashing shit and using literally anything around them as weapons. Flags, bear mace, fire extinguishers. The American flag was used to attack people. There's so much of it. There's so much video. If you go through, whether it's the 40 minutes in the New York Times, whether it's the hours on Parler, or whether it's all the clips that are being released by the Department of Justice and their prosecutions, it's the most documented crime in history. From angles from the people who committed it, from people who bragged about it, from people who believed it wasn't a crime, and people who think that they're literal sovereign people and the U.S. government is illegitimate. Like, these are not people worth defending. Ashli Babbitt isn't worth defending because Ashli Babbitt was a grown-up. When grown-ups make bad decisions and take gambles with their lives and they lose, that is the risk that they took. Ashli Babbitt could have stayed home. She could have just tweeted. She could have stayed outside of the barricade. She could have not tried to break into the window. There are many times when Ashli Babbitt could have walked away from the situation and still be alive today, but she didn't. She didn't. She made a conscious choice, and the officer who had to do his duty had to do his duty. And no one cares about that officer, the PTSD that comes from having to justifiably kill somebody. You know, when it happens in Chicago and when it happens anywhere else, all they ever want to talk about is how police are treated like shit. And in many cases, they are. In many cases, the police officers are untreated fairly. And even now, the same people who were talking about 2020 and talk about this, they don't even check to see, if you were consistent, like I was, saying that riots are bad regardless. Everybody thinks I'm the one accusing them of saying all cops are bad or excusing it, which I'm not. I've been consistent, which is why I feel like I get to say I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. Because people who try to, break into the federal courthouse in Portland shouldn't do that, and they should be arrested and prosecuted. People who break into stores and steal stuff, they should also be arrested and prosecuted. For all the people saying, why aren't we investigating the 2020 riots in conjunction with January 6th? See, here, let me give you a really, really basic definition of something called jurisdiction. And I know for a lot of you who are not legal experts, and if you're listening to this in good faith and you don't know what that is, understandable. But if you listen in bad faith and you're trying to just yell at me, you're wrong. Jurisdiction means that depending on where a crime happens, certain agencies are responsible for investigating it. So, for example, if, let's say, during a riot in Kenosha, somebody breaks into a store and steals something, the Kenosha Police Department should be there to investigate it. It doesn't necessarily become a federal issue, and even with the whole federal government prosecuting riots, there's a whole little bit of a convoluted backstory there. But it's not as if this didn't happen on federal property, right? This wasn't some random building or some park in the middle of the day. This was the U.S. Capitol building, which was in the middle of official government business. And again, reminder, the official government business they were doing was certifying the election results from the other states, which many people in my political party cynically and opportunistically decided to vote against based on concerns of election integrity with zero evidence supporting it. And sure, many of them backed off after they were almost killed by a mob. Many of them didn't, because I'm sure many of them felt like they weren't going to be hurt. I'm sure many of them thought that if they know who I am, they'll walk right past me. They'll go get Nancy. They'll go get Elon. They'll go get AOC. They'll go get the people who are the real problem. But if I'm Madison Cawthorn, or if I'm Marjorie Taylor Greene, or one of the other fucking idiots out there who's probably also a white supremacist, I'm not going to get hurt by those people. In fact, I'm encouraging those people. People are disgusting. People are sick. And the fact that they're in Congress right now walking past the same officers who they're saying started the insurrection, again, no wonder they're having trouble recruiting people. It's because there's all these people out here who, up until 5 minutes ago, thought the police were being unfairly attacked, and when the utmost well-documented situation of the police acting under pressure, bravely, securely, and under the greatest of threats with the greatest restraint imaginable, these people who are liars, opportunists, and racist in many cases, they either want to give the impression that Donald Trump is somehow the victim in the story, which he's not, or they want to give the impression that Ashli Babbitt is the victim in the story, which she is not. The victims are all the staffers who got the fuck scared out of them by a violent mob that broke into the building. The victim is the cops who were punched and gouged and sprayed, who still have to deal with it. And there are so many people around who act so tough, who talk about how they never cry. You don't cry in Congress. You don't cry when you're a cop. Like, these same people act so amazingly tough, but if you ever got in their face personally, they would immediately quiver. You know why? Because they're weak. Because they're weak. People like Julie Kelly is weak. She's a weak-minded person who, honestly, after learning about her, I feel like she's intelligent. Which means that she's not stupid enough to just say things that aren't true, which means she's calculating and lying about it. And I'm guessing, this is my thoughts, she's probably a white supremacist. Can't prove it, but she does write for American Greatness, which has a lot of white supremacy stuff in it, and the Claremont Institute has gone in a very racist direction. All of this is on the Bulwark, feel free to check it out. It's real. And she's always putting up nonsense on Twitter, which she blocked me, so I guess I can't really see it anymore, but you know, she'll post lots of nonsense, like Officer Michael Fanone, the guy who had a heart attack and thought he was going to die. She called him a crisis actor. Like, fuck you, lady. Like, fuck you. Fuck you, Julie Kelly. I hope you're listening to this, and I hope you know you live in Orland Park, and I hope you know your husband is a lobbyist who lobbies on behalf of the Illinois State Police Merit Board. So he's taking money from police to lobby for them, and you stay at home and write articles about the cops? Get fucked, you dumb bitch. Is that too crass for you? Should I sophisticate it for you a little bit more, lady? Talking about coups when Trump was impeached the first time? You know what? That's Julie Kelly. Whatever. She's a piece of shit. Charlie Kirk also talked about Ashli Babbitt. Also somehow decided to be the speaker for the Northwest Suburban Lincoln Day Dinner event, which is the big Suburban Day event. And I'm already mad about it. I'm not going. I've already talked about it. And Charlie Kirk has just proven that he's a piece of shit the entire time. And I kept asking myself before I started recording this, what is the point of me making such a controversial and bold claim about being happy or glad about a person dying? It's because there's so many people who just so blatantly lie every single day and say horrible, terrible things, and they get other people to agree with them. And you know what? Sometimes we do need really hard truths to be expressed. And the fact that I keep hearing that Ashli Babbitt was martyred and that she didn't deserve to die from people makes me realize that either they don't know the facts, or if they do know the facts, they care more about a white woman being killed than they care about the lives of everybody else that she was threatening. Fact is, she was part of the mob. She decided to break through a window. The gun was pointed at her. She had what was coming to her. That's it. That's the end of the story. George Floyd didn't deserve to die. But you would be amazed at the amount of people who spent hours trying to see the same exact recording of a man being suffocated to death by a police officer with a knee on the neck, who made every possible rationalization for this not being what it was, which was a murder. And these same people see a justified police shooting, and they say that is a murder. Despite full evidence, despite full aware of the circumstances behind it, and despite the investigations of both resulting in Derek Chauvin being sentenced to prison and whoever shot Ashli Babbitt to be cleared of the shooting, all of a sudden, no. All of a sudden, Derek Chauvin is the cop who got railroaded, and this guy who shot Ashli Babbitt is a murderer. What's the primary difference here? What, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I wonder what it is that when a black man was murdered on camera by a police officer, they decided to defend the white police officer. But when a white woman is killed justifiably by the police on camera, all of a sudden the white woman is the victim. We have to know about why the cop did what they did. It's, it would be, if it wasn't so obvious, it would be shameful. It's just, my brain hurts. I think about it, and every time it comes up, and every time we see new footage released, and we show people saying, where's the footage? And when they release more footage of people attacking cops, they're like, well, release all of the footage. As if they're going to find some magic bullet in there where it shows one cop throwing a flashbang grenade into the crowd, and that's what caused him to charge. Or the other bullshit narrative, which is that there were FBI operatives in the crowd that actually got it going, which is fucking ridiculous, right? Absolutely fucking ridiculous. If you want to take the case of Gretchen Whitmer, which is a totally different thing, and a whole bunch of legal issues are associated with that, read the BuzzFeed news story about it. Read the other coverage about it. I really hope they get some of those people, and I really hope that the government doesn't fuck this up, because when it comes to these right-wing militias, they've had more trouble trying to get them convicted and held accountable because, you know, for whatever reason, people either support them or the government can't make the charges against them, or they've made a mistake in some process. Right? That's not what this is. This wasn't they try to, you know, arrest people who are plotting something, right? People plotted something, a bunch of people showed up, Donald Trump lit the match and said, go to it because the election was stolen. To this day, Donald Trump believes it was stolen from him. You want to talk about Joe Biden being in a state of mental decline? That man thinks he won the election. That man lives in a totally different universe than Joe Biden. Say what you want about Joe Biden having a stutter and making some small steps. Donald Trump's grasp on reality is tenuous at best. The fact of the matter is that anybody still defending him after all of this either doesn't care about the facts, doesn't care about the advancement of the political party as a whole, and only cares about making people they don't like angry. And not only that, it's about, as Jonathan V. Last said in The Bulwark, which I thought was very crucial, is that they were never really pro-police. They were pro-violence against people I don't like. And when it's black people and all those urbanites, because for some of these people it's still 1960s suburbs thoughts, those are the people that deserve it. But the white people, the good white Christian people, no, they would never commit a violent insurrection and attack cops, and if they did, it was because either the cops started it or it was Antifa. And it's like, you know, you can tell when somebody knows they're wrong and they do everything in their power to avoid responsibility and avoid the facts. Because if they admitted it, perhaps they realized that there may not be any coming back from it, because they would have just abandoned all of their hypocrisy that they've already invested so much in. And they decided to say, you know what? It's got out of hand. Clearly there were people who planned in advance of this event for this to happen. There were people who just jumped in and attacked people. It doesn't matter. Barricades were crossed, lines were crossed, punches were thrown, and cops had to defend the Capitol. They had to fight for their lives from a bunch of rabid people who were caught up in all of the lies that they believed. And of course, you can see from the crowd, there's plenty of white supremacists. There's people who say they're white supremacists. There's people who's wearing shirts that say they're white supremacists. They're part of organizations that are related to white supremacy. It's all there. It's all there. And an honest assessment of the facts would tell us that this is a real problem, that this January 6th commission in the House, with its Democrats and 2 brave Republicans, is really the only chance we're going to get at this point, because Kevin McCarthy, the GOP, they know exactly what this is. They know next year you are going to see 24/7 ads of police officers being attacked at the Capitol and saying, Candidate X thinks this didn't happen. Candidate X thought this was okay. Candidate X thinks Trump didn't cause this. And you're going to have to tell them that, hey, either A, that all that stuff is true and good luck with that, or B, try to defend cops getting assaulted on camera repeatedly. And I'm sure they're going to try everything else in their power to talk about something else. They're going to talk about masks. They're going to talk about vaccines. They're going to talk about passports. They're going to talk about Ashli Babbitt. I have a feeling Ashli Babbitt is going to be a much bigger topic going forward because people are going to try to make her into a martyr, which, by the way, don't. Ashli Babbitt deserves no sympathy. She deserved the law, and that's exactly what she got. She got the long arm of the law. Good on the police for defending people. I'm sorry that police officer had to take someone's life. I'm sorry that officer probably is still going through therapy and treatment. And I'm sorry that this same officer is seeing people who very much brag about their support of cops all of a sudden question this officer because the person that was killed looks like them and thought like them. And they think it's advantageous to them to put a domestic terrorist up and say this person was killed wrongly. It's disgraceful. It's a disgrace. I've read this before. I believe this passage is originally in my podcast about defunding the police versus defunding Planned Parenthood. This is from a letter to the editor my father wrote. This is years ago now. But talking about why the police deserve the pensions they have, my father wrote, in my 22 overall years, it ended up being more like 26, but yeah, I have missed countless holidays with my children and my family, not to mention other obligations. The wear and tear on my body that was endured by rotating shifts and rotating days off throughout the year statistically say that my lifespan will be shortened by several years compared to the average 9-to-5 worker. I have been punched and sent to the hospital, kicked, spit at, hit twice in my squad car while on traffic stops, and nearly hit on other occasions. I have dealt with death, abuse, neglect, and constant criticism of the courts as well as the public. My fellow officers and I do not do this to become rich during our careers or rich during our retirement years, as you suggest. We do our jobs to protect you, your family, and your property. So I take it personally when people say what happened didn't happen or the cops caused it. Blue Lives Matter will no longer be associated with the Republican Party. Being pro-cop will no longer be associated with the Republican Party because they have the most documented crime in history showing still the GOP's preferred presidential candidate launching an insurrection against the government, which resulted in hundreds of cops being injured and all these cops testifying. And the people that you have up there questioning them, not the people in the committee, but the Julie Kellys and Charlie Kirks and Dan Profts and Amy Jacobsons and Newsmax and all these other gross, disgusting people who were pro-cop until it became politically inconvenient and then decided to pander to their audience. You know, it just goes to show you, a lot of people don't really care about the truth. People say they care about the truth. People say they care about an honest assessment of the facts and telling it like it is. Up until they either have to disagree with their audience, they have to disagree with a close person they know. And I'm sure a lot of people had to deal with the implication that we are pro-police, we are pro-law and order. That is why I voted for Donald Trump. And then when Donald Trump launched an insurrection against the government and made all these bullshit legal challenges through the election, a lot of people were put in a position where they had to decide to stick with people that they knew and trusted and had been around for years who were misled or lying, or they could tell the truth and face the consequences of the ostracization that happens. Because let's face it. The Republican Party is in an identity crisis moment. It's been like this for a while. It's been like this pretty much since Obama. They've been trying to figure out what to do, and it basically just became the series of being the opposite of Obama, and it turned into Trump, and then it turned into defending Trump all the time. And it turned into a platform where it was just, we're just going to do whatever Trump says. And even after an election he lost, and even after they lost the Senate because of his electoral lies, and even after a domestic terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol, people still want him to be the president. Either because they have a complete lack of understanding of reality, or they're charlatans and they know exactly what's happening and they're making money off it, or they truly think that they'll be above all of the chaos that comes with it. And they can just say, they'll talk about Joey B having dementia, which he doesn't. Sure, he's got a stutter and he's old, he might slip up here or there. But to be clear, what you're implying is that the other guy should have voted for is in a better mental state, and it turns out his mental state is not only worse, it's in a completely different reality, and he's also a perpetual liar. So, the man personally is worse. So no, that's not going to work. They need to have a real message. The GOP needs to have a real message going forward, which says that, you know what? Donald Trump happened. We can't, pretend it didn't happen. We can't pretend that, a large group of people that we trusted over the years, turns out a lot of them either didn't believe what they said, or were actually racist and crazy the whole time, or maybe the pandemic broke their brains and they decided that they think that the Democrats are such a threat that any attempt to hold Trump accountable is a coup, and then when Trump throws a coup, that's because the Democrats already did a coup. It's such a way to be cynical, and for a way to never admit that you're wrong, or that you can never be out of power, or that you can never be in the minority of any kind, whether it's a political minority or a ideological minority. That's a lot of part of the trick, is that these people believe that they are the majority in America, and when the silent majority, again, the people that voted for Joe Biden, speak out, they're like, nah, it's not real. They see Joe Biden has a small town hall, because again, it's in the middle of a pandemic and people have stuff to do, and they're like, oh, look at how empty it is, but 81 million people voted for him? Yes, because we all have stuff to do. That's what they don't get. A lot of these people believe that because they go to Trump rallies, and there's a lot of people there, this is how it is all over the country. And they believe that every single person who voted for Trump is ideologically committed. And they're not, right? A lot of people just voted for him because they thought he was the Republican candidate, or that they live in a red state, or whatever. And he lost, and they moved on. The idea that you're going to get all 74 million of those people back out again to vote for the same guy with everything that's happened, it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy that they're portraying because they don't want to deal with reality. Which is interesting, because the same people who say facts don't care about your feelings, and fuck your feelings, and we're raising a generation of soft people, people who call Simone Biles and these cops soft. Charlie Kirk's out there taking pain meds because he hurts from sitting down, but he's calling Simone Biles weak. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy, and I am super disappointed in my party for inviting him to speak at our event. Fuck Charlie Kirk. That guy fucking sucks and can get fucked. Look, this isn't really a organized episode of any kind. This is more so just me ranting about it. But look it up. If you're not sure what I'm talking about at all, if you're like, who's Ashli Babbitt? Google it. Ashli Babbitt, former Air Force veteran, undistinguished career, QAnon conspiracy theorist turned insurrectionist, and was killed by police because she was breaking the law and being a threat to the police and to members of Congress. It doesn't get much simpler and basic than that. And I'm sure we tried the whole "it's sad what happened to Ashli Babbitt" thing, but these same charlatans have taken that sadness and turned it into, well, she's a martyr and she was murdered wrongfully. No, she wasn't. And if it requires me saying I'm glad she's dead, and for this to get attention, to get the facts out, then I'm glad she's dead, and I'm glad I used the headline. I don't feel sad at all that Ashli Babbitt's dead. At all. I don't believe in the afterlife. I don't believe there's any kind of divine judgment on Ashli Babbitt. I believe Ashli Babbitt's dead. I believe Ashli Babbitt could have had a long, prosperous life and career. It sounded like she was having troubles with her pool company. And you know what? With COVID, and if you owned a business, I imagine the stress on it is immense. And you feel like you get conflicting messages about masks and what you can do, and the economy's down. I get it. But it doesn't give you the right to break into buildings. It doesn't give you the right to storm into areas where you're not allowed to be in. And it doesn't give you the right to believe nonsense and act on it and act like nothing's going to happen. These people, they gamble with their own lives and then act like everyone else should look out to them. I'm not going to get a vaccine, and if I get sick, someone else will pay for it. My insurance or the taxpayers. Or they'll die, which seems to be happening quite a bit. I'm glad Ashli Babbitt's dead because there needs to be a pushback against this kind of selfishness, against this kind of arrogance, and against this celebration of stupidity, because we think that being part of this team is more important than the ideas and the laws and the rules and the Constitution that we all, at least most of us, profess to care about. And when I took an oath, when I joined the census, I meant it. And you know what? Lots of people take oaths, and they seem to obviously not care about them. Police officers took oaths, and they stormed the Capitol. Members of Congress took oaths, and they voted to decertify the election. They could have had different, more fair investigations, but they chose not to because they know for a fact that if they go into this, they're going to anger Donald Trump, and they're going to anger the people that like him. And since right now, that's the plurality, or I guess the majority of the Republican Party, the 30% of us who are left have to deal with that. And by the people who are actually willing to translate that into action, it turns into Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Who, by the way, kudos to them for showing up, for talking to the police, for telling it like it is. Because that's what we need. That's what we need. It may be a while before the Kirks and the Trumps and the Profs and the Jacobsons and everybody else who's currently in the plurality controlling the GOP to either lose or fade away, or other people like Cheney and Kinzinger and everybody else to take it back and have a real chance at changing things. And it will be hard and it will be difficult. But I don't plan on joining the Democratic Party anytime soon. Since I'm in Illinois, it's for damn sure I'm not going to join the Democratic Party. By the way, there is an episode coming up about the Illinois Democrats and the census, which really got under my gears, but that's a different topic and I'll get to it later. But this is more so just a general venting. I posted Adam Kinzinger's full statement. You should watch it. You should also watch Liz Cheney. You should watch the officers testify. You should watch the New York Times video, which shows the insurrection coverage. You should read my article, Faces of the Insurrection, to show the clips that I put of certain people who are terrible and reflective of, let's face it, a large number of people who are there. Why would somebody, I guess it's not worth asking anymore, but why would someone defend the insurrection? Very simple. You don't defend it. It didn't happen, or it was overblown, or it was caused by security failures, or it was caused because it was an inside job. and they say people aren't charged with insurrection, right? People are charged with the crimes that they're charged with, and there's always time for more charges. But the fact of the matter is that because these people broke through and stopped the government from its business by force, that is an insurrection. What specific charges will deal with specific individuals will all relate to their actions, what a lot of them publicly admitted they did, whether they posted on it on Parler or Facebook or Instagram or Rumble or YouTube or whatever else they did. Between that and their location services being on and not wearing a mask and publicly identifying themselves, in what other scenario would we let criminals brazenly be criminals and act like it wasn't a crime? These same people who were like, why don't you go after Antifa and why don't you go after the people who broke into those buildings and rioters? It's a good question. Why don't they? Could it be because the jurisdiction is different and the police departments were stretched out then? Could it be because Antifa maybe tried to not be caught by the police while the insurrectionists bragged about what they were doing? Could it be maybe, just maybe, that the vast majority of Americans just want to have competent government that doesn't get in the way, but also helps them if needed, and we can provide a general sense of security and structure? Trump didn't provide that. That's what got Trump elected in the first place, but it was also his downfall because he clearly wasn't up to the task, and when the pandemic happened, it was over. And then he obviously just continued his pattern of lying about the election being stolen, and instead of it being just funny or a joke or whatever, it turned deadly serious when he launched a mob on the Capitol. You know, when you listen to like radio call-in shows and people talk about this, even though they say out loud now that there wasn't Antifa or infiltrators in, then people still say it. They'll call and say, yeah, it was Antifa, or they should have caught everybody else, or why aren't they concerned about Ashli Babbitt? You know, these people care more about, you know, the local Arby's being closed due to, protests than they care about the attempted, and let's be clear, when they say overthrow the government, and they sound like a stretch, but if Trump was trying to stop legitimate results from being certified, and then the mob used force to stop that from being certified, that would in fact be overthrowing the government. Because as much as the process is symbolic, because when they get the certified votes, the states have already done all the work of certifying them, so there shouldn't be any issues. So when they all publicly decided to break with it to make him feel better, they just amplified the same message that they're trying to relieve. You cannot appease Trump, because he'll just demand more of you and throw you away when he's done with you. That's the trick. To my listeners who are still here after my long, what goes to beyond 48-minute rant so far about why I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm just trying to get through life like everybody else is. And it's very hard when the things I want to do are being complicated by people who are liars, charlatans, grifters, brazen opportunists, who cloak themselves with flags and patriotism and say that I'm the patriot because I'm questioning if COVID exists and if the election wasn't stolen. You're the fake Republican for acknowledging reality. Because even though I talk about how facts don't care about your feelings, at the end of the day, I'm a selfish person. And my feelings are what matters. And my feelings don't care about the facts. If you're one of those people, then I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry. That sounds like you took the information available and you made a reckless decision. You know the vaccine's safe and you choose not to get it anyway? You're risking COVID. For you and everybody else. It's a selfish decision. You think the election was stolen with no evidence, but you talk about it anyway? It's reckless. Because you're spreading lies. Spreading lies and trying to undermine confidence. And there's a lot of people who will more than happily go along with it because they feel like that's where the crowd is, and they feel like they'll just wait out the crowd. Like, I've been around since 2010. I'll wait this out. Going on 6 years now of Donald Trump. And the people who tried to wait it out have either left or become one of them. There's very few real independent people left in the party trying to fight against this nonsense. And for many of us, it's deeply held principles. It's deep held commitments to the rule of law and the facts that have led us to basically no longer associate with people who maybe we considered friends or nice people because they're saying crazy nonsense. Or they're cheering on racists and liars because they feel like everybody's bad, so these obviously bad people must be okay because the other side's just as bad. When in reality, that may not be the case. I don't know if there is a left-wing version of Charlie Kirk or Julie Kelly, and if there is, feel free to let me know. But from the world I live in, there's a lot of people who make a lot of money and get a lot of attention by lying because they know that's what people want to hear. Because you can be of the mindset where you can take the truth and do with it as you will, or you can tell people what they want to hear. As I famously mentioned in the Simpsons quote, there's the truth, shake your head, and the truth, nod your head and smile. Yeah, there's those quote-unquote hard truths that people will tell you that aren't true, like everything's rigged, Democrats control the media, election was stolen. And then there's actual hard facts that have to be lived with. Actual hard facts, like Donald Trump lost the election, and there is no fraud in any way that would question that. And he lied about that, which resulted in people storming the Capitol, which resulted in people being injured and people dying. This is an undeniable reality that we live in. And to watch the mental gymnastics and cruelty of people who think that they're being patriotic or edgy or contrarian by saying that these clearly objective things didn't happen or they didn't happen the way they did. It goes to show that if you really try hard enough, I guess you can try to build your own reality. And for all the people on the left out there who believe in postmodernism, who thinks that all reality is subjective, well, congratulations. You probably helped launch this, so kudos. Not really. Objectivity matters. If I'm out there and I'm saying gravity isn't real, and I tell everyone else around me gravity isn't real, and if I say if you believe hard enough and jump off that building you can fly, right? Those people may believe that, and they may jump, and they may hurt themselves, and you could think that those people are idiots because they lack an understanding of scientific basis of gravity. But other people are trying to convince them that they can fly and that gravity isn't real. I guess the First Amendment allows them to do that. And I guess in the culture of we should let people be individuals in their actions, I guess you have to let that happen. But I don't have to let these people off the hook. These liars and grifters and shameful people who lie, and they cover for Trump, and they cover for insurrectionists and domestic terrorists. They try to make Ashli Babbitt a hero, and she's not. Ashli Babbitt's not a martyr and not a hero. Ashli Babbitt was a person who made a bad gamble, who believed bad facts, who broke into a place she was not supposed to be in and was subject to deadly force. Simple as that. And I'm not glad because I wanted a person to die. I'm glad because the police, when it came time to make a gut-wrenching decision to protect people's lives, they had the courage to do it. Because God knows if Ashli Babbitt gets through the window, what if she grabs a gun from the cop? What if she makes a run for the people, elected officials that are in there? What if other people follow her through the window who have far worse intentions or weapons, right? That stops because that heroic officer made a decision that he'll still have to live with. But he can live with it, I guess, or she, because we don't really know who. But whoever that officer is did the right thing. That officer is a hero. In the same way that we don't really know, I guess at the time we didn't know who shot bin Laden, but that changed later on. Perhaps eventually, if that officer is named eventually, I'm sure that officer would unfortunately be subject to bad attacks, but just know that that officer is a hero. That officer deserves nothing but kudos for making that decision. I'm glad Ashli Babbitt's dead because I'm glad the insurrection failed. I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead because it's a reminder to people that there are limits to what you can do. And you can believe nonsense and break laws all you want, but when it comes to threatening people's safety, there is a fucking line, and she tried to cross it. And that line was a barricaded door and a broken window punched open by a crazy sovereign citizen who thinks the US government isn't real and thinks the court system is a giant fucking joke. Look it up. Look it up. The kid punching the window is a sovereign citizen who literally doesn't believe laws apply to him. And Ashli Babbitt decided that these are the people she wants to be with. She wanted to march with these people. She wanted to march with racist and ignorant liars and people who thought the election was stolen. And you know what? She wasn't one of those peaceful protesters who stayed outside. She went in the barricade. She went through. She tried to break in to a business. Sorry, not a business. She tried to break in to the offices, which again, not allowed to do. If it was anybody else, in any other circumstance, breaking into any other place, we wouldn't be having this discussion as to whether or not it was justified shooting. But only because it was a white woman, and there are racist white supremacists and Trump supporters who want to make this an issue, they're going to try to make it an issue. They're going to try to unmask the officer who did it, to subject them to death threats and harassment. They're going to try to paint her as an innocent victim, and they're going to try to say that she's a casualty of the Democrats stealing the election. It's fucked up, and it's wrong, and it's gaslighting of the highest affair. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. Because if Ashli Babbitt had to die to save democracy, then I'll take that trade every single time. If Ashli Babbitt had to die so that we could stop the insurrection from going into these places, if Ashli Babbitt had to die so that the alternative was that Mike Pence didn't get killed by a mob, then I'm glad Ashli Babbitt is dead. Because it could have been far worse on so many different levels. And the fact that the only person that had to be killed by the police was Ashli Babbitt shows that they showed great restraint. And you know, these same people who talk about Ashli Babbitt, they don't talk about Roseanne Boyland. The other person who died, she was crushed by the mob that was trying to break through the police barricade. She was crushed by the mob that was assaulting cops with bottles and bear spray and mace and flags and whatever else they could find to throw at them. They're not out here talking about poor Roseanne being trampled to death by their own people, because that would be an inconvenient narrative for them. No, it has to be Ashli Babbitt, because Ashli Babbitt was shot by a cop. And even though everything we've ever said leads us to indicate that we generally trust the police when it comes to these shootings, this scenario, which involves me defending Trump at all costs, means I have to defend an insurrectionist who broke the law, who should have known better. Shame on all of you. Shame on anybody who calls Ashli Babbitt a martyr or a hero or a victim. Ashli Babbitt was a criminal engaging in crimes. She engaged in insurrection. She tried to break through a window, and an officer made the heroic decision to defend the people in the Capitol. I'm glad Ashli Babbitt's dead, because if Ashli Babbitt lived and the insurrection succeeded, it would be far worse for everybody else. If Ashli Babbitt had to die to stop those people from really breaking through and hurting people, then that man's decision saved who knows how many countless lives. And there are people who understand this, and when it comes to any other police circumstance would definitely be for it, but because it involves Donald Trump and the insurrection and the attempt to paint the election, they'll invent every narrative they can to change it. But the fact of the matter is, Ashli Babbitt gambled with her life on bad information and lost and died. And I'm glad she's dead, because if that means that democracy was saved, then by God, it's worth it every single time. Till the next time, folks. Take care.
Thank you.